What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Master Crafted. We are here with another Turn Zero Tactics video, talking all about sabotaging the shit out of your opponent because they're playing the same mission as you, and that shit ain't cool. Phil, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm in the 40k mood. 11th edition is out in full swing. We have tournaments out the wazoo. We have teams tournaments. We have a lot of 40k, and thankfully, that means we have a lot of 40k to talk about. So it's been very exciting.
Yeah, it's been super cool to dive into. It really seemed like a game that was going to take a lot of time to really fully understand in all of the context. And I feel like we're finally getting to that point where it's like, you know what, I have a very, very good grasp on the game. And so we're here to hopefully share some of those insights on how we are playing these missions. Today's topic is priority assets versus priority assets, the Sabotage Mirror. And we're here to deep dive this mission. First up, we got the mission itself. And for the mission, any battle round, end of your turn. For each friendly unit that committed sabotage, you score 3. And then for each of those objectives that you sabotage that are within range of your opponent's territory or are within your opponent's territory, you get a bonus 2 VP. Very, very nice. A lot of points. This is the mission itself. And then the second half, as always, hold one or more objectives. You get 4 sweet points. So let's take a look at the math real quick. Let's assume you can hold your natural all 4 rounds of this game, 16 points. That means you have to make up a whole 29 points of primary if you can from the rest of this mission, which is doing the actions. As we look at the back of this card, it just says your shooting phase, 1 unit within range of 1 objective, excluding your home. And then you can do it unlimited. You just have to do it within range of a different objective with each unit. And then at the end of your turn, you must control that objective. If you do so, you have completed sabotage. So if we do the math, and let's say you can do your natural every single round as well, and you can kill your opponent off the center, and you can do it in the center with 1 unit as well. That means you're going to get 3, and you're going to get 5 for a total of 8 each round, which brings us to a total of, I don't know, is that 40 whole points, Phil?
That
Is that
is
40? Am I just bad at math, or is that a ton of fucking points?
that's so many.
Yeah, it's actually it's a pretty easy bar for you between the 16 and like you don't even have to hold your natural for like 2 rounds and you still just max primary as long as you do the action. So if your opponent takes your natural, don't freak out. You can get those points back.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. The mirror matches, because you have 2 drastically different armies. Could be in some of these situations. They're also trying to compete for the same thing. There's a few variants here because for specifically the objectives, it does say within your opponent's territory, not wholly within your opponent's territory. That is still the stipulation. And then obviously we said we could do it in unlimited time. So let's take a look at the maps because I think there's some worlds here where potentially you are going to be getting 13 off the rip turn 1. There's a very real world where the player who goes first could very easily do that. And if I'm the player that goes first and I'm running priority, I probably am going to look for this. I'm probably going to look for a situation where, and you can see it on this layout because it's actually, it highlights the most obvious version of it is, hey, guess what? If I infiltrate with a halfway decent unit here, my opponent does what they should do is most likely they don't put very much OC or if anything on this objective. So they're not giving up like no prisoners early or anything like that. It's a very good space for us to infiltrate. And then we just walk out to this objective with a unit that has a decent amount of movement and we can just come out, touch it, do the action. Great. That also means that if we have anything back behind this wall, same thing. Or if I'm touching this wall, which would be even better in a lot of situations. I can come up here. Look, that's within 6 inches. I come up, touch that, sabotage that, and then this is our natural. This one is very easy, right? We're standing on this piece of terrain. We come up, we do that. Now we sabotage it. 13 primary right off the rip. We have started that. Now, Lane, is there a downside for me going out and sabotaging every single objective turn 1?
Well, you're definitively giving up at least 1, if not 2 pieces that can be doing the action. It is nice to say, hey, I've already secured, my sabotage extra points, right? We've gotten an additional 5 because we went and did your natural. But in the long run, if you are the player, and I think this is probably just as an overarching theme for this mission, you need to be very aware of unit count. You need to understand who has the trash advantage when it comes to this mission, because if you can kill their trash, it feels horrible. Sure, they can kill you back and they can do a lot of damage, but if they can't afford to be doing the mission, they just lose. So I think that's something you really, really need to take into account as you're looking at your list versus your opponents, right? Can I afford to do something like this, right? And one of the other problems with this is, right, if I see that my opponent decided to infiltrate right there, I'm looking, do I have a scout unit? Do I have an infiltrate unit of my own that has the same OC that I can put on that point? Because if I can scout up to my natural, or I can just infiltrate on the back side of it, then I go, okay, cool. Well, they put a unit out there. It's not gonna. I at least know it's not gonna go get those points. Now, did I lose my own potential chance to go do the same thing to them? Yes, if I only have one infiltrate, I definitively am probably not fast enough to go touch their natural and do the action if I go first, right? So I think it's really one of those things you want to keep in mind on what's worth the risk, right? If you win the roll off, you say, okay, my opponent deployed where Phil said with his infiltrators. Do I want to counter it and say, can I do it myself? Or are we taking the inventory as well and saying, well, they have a scout. So if they put their scout in that right spot, I just can't get to it. Because the only way for me to stop that is for me to actually deploy 8 inches away from their deployment so they can't scout on, or at least 8 inches. We can deploy on the backside of the objective technically, as it's only 7 inches wide, but that's still a risk. If we don't go first, our unit is so easy to kill
Yeah.
being that aggressively positioned. And we just don't love that, right? We've given up a unit. Sure, they might have exposed something, but if they were just able to peek from the backside of that terrain and we can't interact with what kills it, it's really not worth the risk. So I do think there is a lot of thought you need to put into specifically deployment for your action pieces in particular. It's going to be pretty obvious there on the triangle ruin. It's not that hard to go from there to the center. You're probably going to be loading that up with a fair amount of action pieces.
Yeah, this is definitely a smaller center midfield, and it's the same across all three. This very, very small center midfield objective. It's not like the big L's that we saw previously. So, like, this space for infiltrating is okay. It's not awful. I actually like it for a lot of units. This is less than 8 inches. So you could really cover this with any amount of reactives and say, okay, I'm off this profile, but I am bubbling out this piece of terrain and say, if you get within 8 inches, maybe I can reactive onto it. Maybe I can reactive further away. And then maybe I'm in position because I'm a smart 40k player because I listen to Mastercraft it. And I make sure that this unit is within 6 inches of that next piece of terrain. And I can just say, okay, my reactive goes next. I'm just going to move back here 6 inches. I'm going to touch this terrain. And now I have hidden again or whatever the case is, right? So this central piece of terrain, there are some units that can be very effective if they infiltrate here right off the bat because they bubble out, because they can deny your opponent, honestly, very safely. And I could do the same thing on this side. I could come to this side of this objective and let's see here. I can come to this side of the objective off the profile, and I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So I could like touch this or just be in this corner and then be able to reactive move within 6. I think I could do it from right here. I could reactive move within 6 and get back and touch this piece of terrain and have that whole thing bubbled out, which is like exactly what we want of the unit that could infiltrate there and deny my opponent from getting that 13 points. So there are tools here that can actually do it. You just got to build those tools into your army because I will say, if you're a priority player, you should expect to play the priority mirror a couple times in a 6-round GT or even a 3-round RTT, or you're just going up. The odds are high that your opponent will run priority assets because it is that good of a disposition.
Yeah, 100%. And so when we're talking about it, right, the center generally is going to be looked at as the key to this mission, right? What are the things that we can do to help ourselves, deny our opponent the ability to do their actions effectively? One of them is just standing in the way. As always, 2-inch engagement range if you can pull it off, especially wrapping around their side. Hopefully, maybe they don't have a reactive move piece, but they put something on there that you can go and charge and kill. And if you use your consolidate correctly, you can just make a ring around that side of the objective, preventing them from standing on it to do the action themselves, right? This is very basic, just good positioning, while you yourself have a piece on your side that is hidden behind one of those dense pieces to have 12-inch, gone to ground. And hopefully it's just generally uninteract, right? If we can do that, it doesn't matter if they can kill us off, right? If we're able to win that primary battle and have those extra pieces that are so annoying to deal with, it really, really helps in this mission. Yeah. One of the things I also want to talk about is we have not talked about your home objective at all. You cannot let your opponent onto your home for free. If your opponent has up down, if they have a good rapid, right, that is a free 5 points if you leave it. Like it, you cannot let them ever get something back there. I had a game against Dark Angels. They decided to leave their home. I just said, cool. I'm gonna up down with my Gaunt's Ghost. We're gonna go. We're gonna get an extra 5 primary. They had to drop a unit of their. They had to rapid ingress a unit like Vanguard Vets and run back and go clear their home, and that bought me more time to get control of that center and keep racking up points. Right? You cannot let people behind you. If they ever get your natural and your home for free, it's just it makes it so hard to keep up on that scoreboard.
Yeah, it could be a dagger in the heart right there that could end the game if your opponent, because priority scores so well, because of the math that Lane showed you, is like it is going to be that close. It's going to be a difference of secondaries, and especially if your opponent can get behind you and not only get your home, but also get something like behind enemy lines or plunder or anything like that. It gets very dangerous, right, in terms of scoring points. So yeah, this layout specifically, it is much easier to screen our home, right? You do have very good staging points, whether it be inside this terrain or off this profile. Your home is tucked far enough back that it is valuable to run a unit of 10 OC intercessors, whatever you got on your home. It's very easy to control. And then this front area is controlled quite a bit by the unit that you have staging inside this L. So like your home should, especially in this layout A, should never get touched. If we're playing properly and we're doing the things we need to do, because you should be able to screen everything out. And ideally, we just force our opponent to drop here in the open. And if they do, fine, we have something actually reasonable in here that can go after it. Because the distance between our home and our opponent's expansion, that is not like that is a reasonable distance. 13 inches, 14 inches, right? Once again, anything with decent movement, 12-inch move, they could very easily get onto our home. And we have to make sure we prevent that. So we have to make sure we're screening out. We have to make sure we're pushing this objective so they're not able to push beyond it. They have to fight us off their natural objective, which is incredibly important. So like if I'm a priority player, that's probably the main focus. Like I can flip this middle with good shooting lanes from the units that are staged on the sides. I can't do it if I'm so concerned with flipping my own natural back. So this distance is short. I need to make sure I protect it because the same thing is going to happen on the other side. Our opponent could very easily, or we could very easily look to push, our opponent's home. So you got to keep it safe.
Yeah, and I think because of how wide this board is, it honestly gets more accentuated than some of the other maps. But in this matchup, because that center is so small and it's just generally still so easy to get to, I think a lot of players like hyper fixate on it. But the thing that can get forgotten for multiple reasons is just a solid either rapid ingress or just something comes in off the side of the board. We talk about this every single mission, but it is so prevalent in 11th edition that we have to. That gap between your natural and your home is a amazing spot if nothing is covering it to rapid ingress. Because if nothing is covering that, it can just come in off the side of the board, threaten things that are hidden behind that center objective as it just moves towards the center, or just come on and absolutely decimate things on your natural. On the flip side, if somebody isn't actively taking and screening out that space, you can go in front of your own natural and go shoot everything off of your opponent's home, providing yourself a hole to hopefully bring in another unit the next turn to just get another easy 5 points, right? As you have kind of flipped the board in that sense.
Yep. I 100% correct. That space is a double-edged sword. It is very open, so it can be punished, but also it's very open, so you have to put something there, or you have to threaten it with something reasonable, like to actually stop that rapid ingress from happening. So yeah. Yeah, that's why I think like this area right here, these L's I fight over all the time when I'm running the priority matchups because I want to put a unit here if I'm the blue player. I want to put a unit here to make sure that I'm on a position that this area is screened out, whether it be not being on the profile, right? And just, hey, running a unit along here, that's fine. You kill them, you come out, all good. I will kill the thing that came out and killed it. Okay. Or I'm touching this objective that way, maybe I've pushed beyond and I'm just trying to maintain hidden here and I just want to make sure that my opponent cannot see me. That's also super, super valuable. Or just getting the benefits of cover. Maybe I'm just saying, hey, I'm pretty freaking durable. Minus one to hit. You don't have any way to ignore cover. Sign me up.
Yeah. Yeah. So for an example of how I solve this problem, right? A lot of the time with guard, right, you'll put your command squad on your home and everything like that. I put my command blob on the back of my natural and then just put a unit of 3 Ogren, right? Someone's like, well, you can come kill it, but it's just hidden behind that large L that's on the top because I just needed something to take up space, right? Because the difference between the front of that ruin and the back where all my OC was to make sure no matter what, I'll always hold my 4. It was enough that even with a jump pack unit in reserve, it just didn't feel good to try to get into. And even if you do, you're not killing 15 guardsmen, right? With a unit of 5, jump pack infantry. Like you're just not going to do it. So because we can put something just super cheap and just there to screen at the front of our natural and high OC at the back, right? We can layer our defenses in a way that keep us safe and also take that space. Because eventually, later in the game, you can still send those resources forward. And then I just put Gaunt's Ghost on my home, said, well, you can't shoot this. And if you really do want to rapid or drive on the edge of the board to come shoot my Gaunt's Ghost, like, sure, buddy, come on. I'll take that trade because you're not going to do it in a way that you'll actually ever get to complete the action. So yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things we want to be looking at. How are we going to maximize our scoring? If your opponent ever gives you a hole, I think we talked about this the last Dawn of War. You need things in rapid or in reserves because you need to remain flexible. On these wide board edges, you need to be able to say either you gave me a hole here or you gave me a hole there, and you need to exploit it. There is so much room for opportunity on these boards, on those edges, because there's such a big gap that it feels horrible to try to prevent your opponent from bringing something in.
Yeah, absolutely devastating. I think we've explained this enough. You ready to move on to layout B?
Let's do it, man. Layout B, Crucible of Battle. I feel like this is like the lost puppy of 11th edition, dude. We like hardly ever see Crucible. I feel like it just like got kind of like pushed in the corner. They decided to go with everything else more than Crucible. It's in here more than I probably give it credit for, but I just feel like it's the least thing. Like I've played on this the least by far so far.
Yeah. I've played on way more Dawn of Wars, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm fucking tired of it. But yeah, we'll dive in. Crucible of Battle, amazing staging points. I don't, Phil. Do you find it hard at all on this map to stage anything?
No, absolutely not. You have a
It's
great staging
insane.
point to get after the center. You have a great staging point to get after your opponent's natural, right? Like this is really nice. Come on. This is really nice. This is a great staging point. I can push very easily behind this and then get onto my opponent's natural. I can use this to get onto the center. We have great staging points behind it. So to like lock and load with the next unit, it's very easily to put your next up unit right here. And then they can, if I'm running a unit with decent mobility, they can get up into that pocket and replace. The same thing here. They could be in this corner. And then the same thing, same rules apply. I could just come up here into this pocket or come out here and touch this objective to do our sabotage action, right? Like it is reasonable. Now, this is probably the hardest one of, if not, I would say probably the hardest one to get that max 13 on turn one. Because to do that, like there's not every unit wants to start right here on the other side and then come out and touch and do the action. Like that's not great. And then not every unit has the mobility to come out here and touch this, in a realistic way. And you're taking a lot of risk there if you're touching that objective or touching this piece of terrain. But you are relying on 12-inch hidden, so I mean, not the end of the world. But you can get out and touch these two. I do like it. There is a nice little staging point here. These side angles are actually kind of terrifying, right? Because the angles that you can cut of like trying to stage a unit behind, this area is not actually safe, right? Like there is a lot of open space here. Your opponent will be staged here. You should expect that to happen. But there is good space behind this profile. There is good space behind this 6x2, right? Like I could very easily be on either side of this profile, rely on my 15-inch hidden. pre-measuring everything and saying, hey, you can't get within 15 inches. That's all I really care about. And then being able to come back up here and flip this objective or do the action if need be. So like, yeah, I think it's a relatively balanced map. It's got good staging points. The backfield is actually used somewhat, and then your home objective is very, very safe compared to what we just saw on layout A. Like this home objective feels much safer and less threatened than what we just saw because we have pretty much our natural. We have this big, strong L out in front of us, and then we have our combo 2x4 over here getting after our opponent's expansion. So like our home feels very, very safe here, and I think it would be a mistake if our opponent was getting on there. It was like a mistake on my part, not necessarily like a fault of the board that forces me to stretch further than I actually can. So yeah, I really, really like this board. I think it's relatively straightforward in terms of how to play it. Yes, you're infiltrating inside this pocket because you really care about getting after that. But realistically, the place care about infiltrating the most or scouting to the most is inside this L because I need to get here so I can come out and do my first sabotage action. So like there is value in all of these things. It's just like a very, very balanced, slightly open benefits. You got a couple really nice shooting lanes, right? We already talked around this board edge. It's very easy to touch this piece of terrain, and then now you have shots into like your opponent's home territory. So like, yeah, I like this map.
Yeah, I think so. One of the other things, I think it's more pertinent on this, and especially for specifically armies that have more trash. Like, we'll say maybe you're playing, we'll say you have a unit of scouts and you also have a combi lieutenant, right? But you're playing something that's fairly elite, and you want to make sure that it is really hard for your opponent to get those points early, right? You've decided that your game plan best supports a more aggressive trading style and taking the space. You want the lead in points, right? If you start your scouts behind the center and then you have your combi lieutenant in that stage corner that Phil talked about, right? We can put our scouts on the other side of that objective and go take the space and say, you know what? I know you're a pretty elite army and you might have some trash pieces, but do you feel comfortable bottom of turn one coming out and really doing something about this? Because they really can't, right? Sure, they're going to kill your scouts, but if you're taking up that space in a way that they can't do that action consistently, right? You can even be like, oh, well, the really cheeky thing is if you measure how far your opponent can move with their one piece that can do the action, and you put your combi lieutenant within that range of where they could barely make it onto the objective, they can move out there, but they can't actually step on the objective. And then you reactive move back away. Like that shit is like diabolical if you can pull it off because it feels fucking horrible for your
Yeah.
opponent. If they're like, well, I put something in the corner and it can go touch there. If you put your scouts forward, we'll say you screened it off. You said, okay, cool. I'll give it my scouts, but you can't deal with it. And then they go, okay, well, I can measure to here. Your combi lieutenant has like a 5-inch bubble of you can't stand here. By the time you have the 2-inch engagement and it's inch base, right? You can just go step on the other corner on your next turn, do the action, and say, what are you gonna do about this? And that's insane. Those little micro plays that you can have if people are not careful. It just you're already up 10 points of primary because you did the action twice and they couldn't. Right. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we're looking at is sacrificing for positioning. Right. I hate losing my combi lieutenant if I was a Marine player, but if I could pull that off just to say I did and they don't handle it correctly, I might not even lose my combi lieutenant.
Yep.
Right. Like insane. And I think just that repetitive, I'm just going to keep putting stuff on here and you can't stand here. Like you need to be looking for every opportunity to do that if you can afford the unit loss.
Yep. Yeah, it makes a huge difference if we just play that properly. So you're absolutely right. I think that's like we could talk about this layout till we're blue in the face, but I really like the balance in this. The staging areas are very nice. You just have to find ways to, as as the mirror, you need to find ways to deny the action. So if you can go out there and use your coherency and use the 2-inch bubble or use the reactive or use OC to make sure that you're forcing your opponent to put out more than you had to put out, then you are going to be in a good position at the end of the game. But if they only like, if every turn they have to just do the one asset to go out there and do the action, you're going to be in a tougher spot. And there's other things to consider here. There's some armies that have great units that can also action and shoot. That's a real problem. If they can come out there and only give up the one thing, action to do the sabotage action, and then also kill you, like that is very, very difficult to deal with. And there's some armies that just can't handle that.
Yeah, 100%. Being very aware and also just like if there was a mission to just throw charges to see if you make it into their units that are doing their actions. When I played this last weekend, I just was like, screw it. We'll see if my Hellhound makes it into your intercessors that are on your natural doing your action. Because now you can't do the action, right? Normally, I wouldn't do that. I'm never going to auto see you, and now my piece is just locked up there. But now, if you don't deal with that and shoot yourself out of combat with your own tanks, right? Then you can't do the action at all with your intercessors, and it feels horrible, right? Looking at ways you can affect scoring, and affect the action economy specifically. That's just this mission.
Yep. 100%. Absolutely. All right, Lane. Layout C. We good to go?
Yeah, dude, let's knock it out. The old tipping point. Hell yeah. This one, again, who would have thought, has another very easy spot to go touch the center from, and is probably the largest, actually somewhat safe staging point of any of them. You can fit a lot of shit behind that L in the middle. The problem is you can't fit a lot of other stuff that's not infantry very safely on other parts of this deployment. It is brutal. It is very, very open. If you are playing a like monster mash army that doesn't have a lot of shooting yourself, and you're playing against anything that has a lot of shooting, this is a tough board, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, like, realistically, if let's say you have some big giant bugs or something like this is not a safe space for you to be, right? Even if you were to come up here and touch this objective, like, this is not great. And if you have to start here, right, it's very realistic to say our opponent could start something, start some shooting asset with some halfway decent speed. Assault is everywhere in the game now. So, like, coming up here and then just saying, okay, well, I'm just going to draw this nice little line and I'm going to touch this, really important tool that you have that needs to come out here turn one and kill or do the action, do the sabotage action. That's very, very tough. There is no realistic spot. So you're pretty much relying on durability here of, hey, this unit, whatever it is, I need it to survive because I need it to walk out. Now, this is going to harken back to a lot of the suggestions that Lane and I have discussed over 10th edition, over 11th edition. It's like, you know what solves that issue? Infiltrate. If I infiltrate a halfway decent unit, I don't have to now expose that big, really important piece. If I infiltrate along this wall and I make sure that I measure out the maximum distance my opponent can go, say, okay, well, I've hidden and go to ground. You can't get within 12 inches of me. I am safe here from shooting, right? Like, now we're going to measure out our opponent's, combat tools. How close can they get to us here? Can they actually get onto this profile and flip it? Whatever the case is, it's all about the pre-measuring game, especially in deployment, to make sure that the units that I'm putting out are actually safe. Now, there are obvious ones, right? Like the units in here, unless our opponent has an obnoxiously fast unit, it's very difficult for them to get up and touch this opposite piece to shoot the things that are behind this profile. But we're pre-measuring everything. That's why infiltrate is so important, because I need to stop this. I need to make sure that I control this, whether that be the unit starting off the profile and cutting this angle to make sure that this unit can never touch me, or I'm coming up and touching this because I know my opponent is staged here, because we talked about how layup B wasn't very obvious to get onto our opponent's natural. Like, you got to do a little bit of work for it. Some armies might not even be able to do it, period. This one, it's pretty much automatic, right? Like, it is very realistic to say that our opponent could start staged on this profile and then get onto this terrain piece and then do the action, which is problematic. So there's a way we can stop that. We could infiltrate onto this objective. And you may say, Phil, don't you remember 10th edition? We never did that. You're right, but that was 10th edition. This is 11th edition. There's worlds where denying those initial, because if I can deny my opponent's sabotage as the player going second, that means my final sabotage was going to be that much stronger because I didn't give a 13 to my opponent turn one. But you have to measure these things out. So, like, I'm making sure, okay, you have 5 OC here, but this is a battle line unit that's touching this objective, and maybe I have 6 OC on here. So no matter what, you're not going to be able to flip it, and now it's just going to disincentivize your opponent from coming out to that objective at all until they have something real to actually go on there and flip it. So, like, those are the kind of decisions that I'm making and Lane is making that help us win games more often. Is like, hey, it's just the very simple math of, like, you can't actually flip it. In the process of me doing this, I'm denying your initial sabotage, and also, like, you can't actually kill this unit, so I'm not risking anything at all.
Yeah, yeah, and even looking at this mission, in a more aggressive style, right? We can infiltrate at the front of our objective, right? String along that front wall because it is fairly safe, right? We can get gone to ground and we could say, are you going to commit a major resource to come peek this corner or come charge me? But again, we're always talking about positioning, right? If our 2-inch engagement prevents their scout unit, anything, from being able to run up turn 1 and do the action, right? Doesn't matter if we gave up an overforce or a no priz, we prevented 5 points of scoring for our opponent turn 1 if they were able to just run up and touch that objective, right? They can't do the action if they can't stand on.
Makes a huge difference. Makes an absolutely huge difference. Cool. Lane, these side shooting lanes are pretty terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tale as old as time in 11th edition. All 2 months have wizened us up to, you know what, we're keeping stuff in reserves because we have to. And the rest of our assets are probably, once our infantry has kind of made it up into our natural, into that kind of that centerpiece and into the one that threatens our opponent's natural, we're probably going to put our own good shooting units right behind that big L that's formed in the center because it's just so good. We can swing to the, to the top of the board, to the bottom of the board, and see around that center objective really, really well. And if our opponent is a melee army, they're gonna have to put assets kind of out in that open, and it is not gonna be hard for us to deal with them. So this is just like, if this is 10th edition layout one, it just has less dense terrain in your way, so that's great. This is still just the most immaculate staging ruin, like for anybody. You're going to be putting stuff here. The other spot is, potentially if you know your opponent's ranges, you can kind of put stuff behind your own natural still. I feel just fine with that. But in general, right, you're going to be looking to do that. If you have two things and you're like, I don't feel safe trying to make it to that spot, you can even be behind that triangle ruin just towards the right, or I guess the bottom side of it, because it's still not far, right? If you move 10 inches, I think you can still touch either one of those terrain pieces, right?
Gotcha.
And see through it, right? It's not that hard. You can load that center full of assets because it's not hard to tag in.
You know what the other terrifying thing about this lane is? It's very easy for your opponent to run up, touch this, right, with their decent shooting asset, and now they see everything.
Hmm.
Now they see your natural. Now they see anything that's staged. Now they see anything that's on this, behind this objective, right? Now they can even see into your home, right? If you're not staged properly, if it's not infantry beast or swarm, like this as I never heard it said like that, but you're right. This is kind of like the layout one of 11th edition. It does have that nice staging L, and it leads to everything else that is good in the world.
Yeah, it's gross. And well, yeah, there's dense terrain there, but it's a skinny little tower. And with pivot rules, it might as well not even be there. It costs you like an inch of movement to move just far enough forward to rotate and go around it to touch the center. Like it's barely in the way. So that's
Yeah, it's
it's
pretty
just rough.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably enough. We can the same lessons are gonna apply, right? If you can always stand in the way, take up space, if your opponent cannot literally do the action because they can't be on the objective, that's very, very valuable. Your understanding of positioning can just straight win you games. If you have extra trash, you can abuse it. If you can kill your opponent's trash, it's worth it. If they sure they can kill your whole army, but if they don't get it done until turn 5 and you made sure that they just didn't have any action pieces left, they're not going to win the game. Like they literally can't win the game. This mashup is probably one of the, like, if you can kill your opponent's trash, it's just worth it, right? Like as long as you can keep some units yourself, you'll just definitively have the edge. So yeah, be looking at any chance you can either deny them scoring or deny them scoring pieces. That's the too long didn't read of this whole fucking thing. So, but please keep reading along with us. We love doing these videos for y'all, and we're gonna keep cranking them out. And you know we'll have to do an updated series as we go because we're probably gonna see some changes. Phil, I don't know about you, but I feel like some of these primary missions might get touched here or there in the next few months.
Yeah, priority assets and taking hold being two of them.
Yeah, but when they do that, we'll be sure to release a new updated video because, yeah, we want y'all to have current information whenever possible. If you have not joined our Discord, please do so. Go ahead and like, comment on this video. It helps us out immensely. And as always, do not forget that victory isn't given, it is forged, and it's forged right here at Mastercrafted. We will see you all next time.
See you guys.